Hey darlings. In the afternoon, it was getting dark, as Eloisa was looking for something to eat in her house, searching for something to feed her children. Alice and Hector were playing safely, very eager to understand their mother's absence, who could not even offer a simple meal. At the age of 38, her life became a daily series of challenges after her husband's loss. "I'm hungry," Alice complained, pulling her mother's handkerchief lightly. Eloisa smiled bitterly, confirming that soon they would find something to eat, although she was not very sure about it, while searching for a completely irrelevant to his environment. Her heart beat hard as she imagined that the piece might be worth some money, but what she found then left her with a cut. The decision to do with the discovery weighed on her like a stone. "Mom, what happened?" Hector asked, approaching her with curiosity. But the Virgin quickly hid the envelope. "Nothing, my love, just an old thing," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Let's take it home. It may be useful to us until we decide what we will do." The yellow is a para tyris mia figura stavathos putus para colus is a luetta itin calamini apodos kotati puihirhisi. Na pefti standas discol na diacrini canis leptomeri esi perusia tu para turitai ekani tincardia tis na typa igregora anamignian das ton fovo metin adrenalini tis anacalypsis mama pios and aftos pios moscatatsi rotsei. Elisa, with her voice low and a little scared. Eloisa held her daughter's hand tighter. "I don't know, my love, but we're going home now. We have to tell someone we found her," Hector suggested, looking at the precious necklace that his mother was carrying and trying to read her expression. "We will decide this at home. For now, this must stay between us." Eloisa knew that she had to act quickly. She decided to keep the money in safe and discreet places before she went into any other activity. As she walked in the dark streets, her mind was full of thoughts and worries. Who could have left this bag full of money in the bottom of his house? And why? It was clear that someone knew about the financial difficulties and wanted to help. But at what cost? Confidentiality tormented her, but she had no choice but to give up now. She had to think about her children and how they could change their lives with this money. As she approached her destination, she was dominated by fascism. She was ready to face every challenge and take the opportunity. An increasing anxiety and a roof that, just after their violence, was protected from the rain, looked even more vulnerable that night. Alice and Hector watched their mother with sad eyes, remembering the hunger they had expressed earlier. But before deciding on the next step, Eloise self-designed a simple meal with some vegetables she had managed to save, devouring her hungry children's mouths as they ate. But the burden they had found did not subside its broadness. Eloisa knew that she needed advice and help, but without a phone at home, the only option was to ask for help from close. "Mom, we will be okay?" Elisa asked, simulating a spoonful of food. Eloisa smiled at her, despite her heart being closed from anxiety. "My love, we will be fine. We just have to be careful." Decided, Eloisa wrapped the envelope in an old cloth and told her children that she would return soon. Then she walked through the dim streets of the neighborhood to the small local police station. When she arrived, she found the police officer Nicolas around the station, as he always did. Nicholas was an old acquaintance, always friendly and careful to the community. "Nicholas, I need your help," said Eloisa, approaching him with a hidden pocket. "I found it today, and I'm afraid it might bring problems." Eloisa explained the situation while Nicholas was checking the money. "You were right to bring them here, Eloisa. It seems that it is a very large financial amount if it is not involved in something illegal. I will take a look at it, and I will investigate its origin by looking at the numbers in the bills," Nicholas explained, already beginning to add a reference and taking up the responsibility for the money. Eloisa felt a momentary sense of relief. She promised to keep everything secret until she learned more. When she arrived at the entrance of her house, with her heart still beating hard and not being sure if she had made the right choice, Eloisa saw a piece of paper that drew her attention. A small envelope with a mark was on the heated table. Eloisa lifted it up and read the handwritten message. "Don't go where they don't want you. Forget the money." Her blood was frozen on her shoulders as she looked around, but no one saw her. Holding her hand in her hand, Eloisa locked the door of her house, now knowing that the situation was more dangerous than a minor accident, as she had imagined. The first thing she did was to hug her children, trying to calm her fear. As she walked into the house, she heard voices that strengthened the feeling of loneliness. "Mom," because people behave strangely, Hector asked one morning as he was looking out of the window of the kitchen. Eloisa, who was preparing a moderate breakfast with the money she got from selling some things she found in the garbage, thought a lot before answering her son. Sometimes people become angry or scared when they don't understand something they love. They don't know what happened, but they know that something happened. Hearing the conversation, Alicia looked at her mother with worried eyes. "They think we did something wrong. Isn't that right?" "No, we didn't do anything wrong," Eloisa confirmed, by marking Elisa's hair as she tried to hide her own anxiety. As the day progressed, the feeling that they were watching her was not diminishing. Eloisa noticed a black car moving slowly along the road where they lived. The first time she thought it was a collision, but the second time her heart started beating faster. When the car passed for the third time, he stopped for a while in front of his humble house before continuing, making Eloisa more and more anxious. Fear prevailed during the night, while the children were sleeping. He sat at the kitchen table with her hands trembling nervously, trying to calm her nerves. The silence of the house was coming in close contrast with the windfall of thoughts in his mind. Around midnight, a loud engine broke the silence and Eloisa got up quickly, looking through the broken curtain to see the same black car parked on the other side of the road. A tall figure came out and started walking towards her house. Her heart beat wildly. "It can't be a coincidence," she murmured in her ear, and, feeling a mixture of fear and anger, she woke up. "Children, wake up. We have to go to the back of the house." "What's going on?" "Mom, calm down," Eloisa ordered, with her voice steady, but her heart in shock. The minutes were passing like hours as they waited in the dark. Eloisa heard every sound outside, wondering if the figure would finally decide to go in. After a long time, the sound of the engine was heard again and the car was removed. Eloisa left a sigh of relief, but she knew that the night was more of a warning than the end of her problems. Eloisa knew that things were not going well. The night visit was a clear reminder that the danger was still very close, maybe closer than ever. As a result of the night incident, Eloisa was just after violence in place to close her eyes, but as soon as the sun began to shine on the horizon, she got up and started. Elisa and Hector woke up from the smell of coffee and followed her, feeling the intensity that followed in the air. "Mom, are you okay?" asked Hector, watching the circles deep down below the eyes of Eloisa. She was forced to smile as she put the coffee. "Yes, my love, I'm just a little tired." Eloisa's dream was to find a decent job so that she could offer her children a decent life, but few people wanted to accept a simple woman like her, especially when she had no money to buy good clothes for the interviews. Eloisa simply managed to do it with a small voice. What was it? After the coffee, a knock was heard at the door and Eloisa's heart showed fear. She approached and opened the door to find Nicholas, the police officer, with a serious expression. "Eloisa, we have to talk. There is an evolution in relation to the money you found." She took her to the kitchen table and looked at her seriously before continuing. "We discovered that money is connected directly to a large network of financial factors, and the most worrying thing is that we discovered that they knew that she found the money. While you were in the hall, one of the remote cameras caught it. We recorded you finding the object, but we could not recognize you in the recording. We investigated the money's presence and concluded that the face behind all this is Grangorios Ruiz, a name that may be recognized. It has a great influence and is dangerous. The mind of Eloisa turned around. Gregorio's Ruiz was very well known in the city, a businessman with fame both as a friend and as someone who should not be opposed to him. Some said he had a relationship with the mafia. Eloisa had already seen him in the neighborhood with some dangerous guys. "What does she want from me?" Eloisa asked, trembling with her voice. "She wants to make sure that she will not cooperate with the police. There is much to lose if this research continues," Nicolas explained, looking directly into the eyes. As Nicolas left, a rascal pulled out Loisa's attention. He looked out the window and saw a parked car. It was not the black car from before, but a more expensive car, accompanied by two criminals who appear to be there to ensure the safety of the criminal. This time, Eloisa could not ignore him, and there was no time to break him, so she opened the door trembling in fear. "Dear Eloisa, I am Gregorio's Ruiz. I think you have heard my name in this city. We all worry about you. We heard about your discovery and were very impressed by your honesty," he said ironically. It was clear from his tone that he was displeased. Eloisa knew that she had to return the money to the police, because if she didn't, she could be exposed and that would lead to even more problems. "What do you want from me, Gregorios? I just want to make sure that there are no excuses. It would be a pity if your collaboration with the police affected the community. We both know that sometimes it is better to leave things as they are, to swear that we found nothing," said Gregorio with a threatening look on his face. Eloisa felt a shiver running through her ankle, and Gregorio was there not only to scare her, but also to do it in front of everyone, showing that he was not afraid of the consequences of his actions. "I will think about what you said," Eloisa managed to say, with her voice more stable than a small tone, what she really felt. Gregorio simply smiled again, with a smile that did not reach his eyes. Then he made sense to his security guards to follow him as he returned to his car. After the man left, Eloisa felt that the trial had not yet ended. The neighbors' gazes became more intense, the mosquitoes more frequent, and the atmosphere around the house more breathtaking. Eloisa tried in every way to maintain a normal, everyday life for her children, but the constant fear of the neighbors took over her thoughts. "Mom, people behave strangely again." Hector's school as they returned from a quick visit to the local market. Eloisa tried to calm her children, but she was smarter than a little boy. What could be seen? One day, when she arrived home, Eloisa noticed something strange outside. A note was written in red ink. The unwritten letters were written, "Stop talking or pay the tribute." Her heart beat fast and looked around for someone who could be the messenger's assistant, but the road was strangely quiet. They wanted to remove the categories, most likely claiming that the money was theirs. "Mom, what does that mean?" Alice asked, trembling in fear. "Nothing, my love. It's just someone who is trying to scare us," she said, trying to appear calm, but her heart was beating like a drum in her chest. Then she moved away from the door and went to the public phone near her house and called Nicholas with trembling hands, hoping that he would get up soon. "Nicholas, it's me, Eloisa. Someone wrote a threat to my door. I'm very scared. I'm coming now," Nicholas answered without hesitation. "Don't leave the house and keep the doors and windows closed." While Nicholas was waiting, Eloisa gathered the children in the living room, trying to distract them from playing games. But her mind was far away. She was jumping on every bump, on every shadow that passed through the window. The fear grew every minute that passed. Nicholas arrived in a few minutes, knocking the door repeatedly. Eloisa had to open it, lying down when she saw his face. "Let me check the message," said Nicholas, entering quickly. As he examined the door, his face became serious as he read the threatening words. "The situation is getting serious. Eloisa, I should report this and maybe I'll ask the police to look around. But this will help Nicholas." "Of course it will help. We will do the little thing we can do," Nicholas confirmed, even though there was a tone of uncertainty in his voice. After Nicholas left, Eloisa sat on the couch watching her children play. She felt confused between telling them the whole truth about the danger they were facing and keeping a decision of normality to protect their innocence. The next morning, Eloisa heard a noise outside and opened the door. At the bottom of the street was a fat bag without direction, only her name written in front. Her heart began to beat fast as she looked around the front, lifted the envelope, and went inside. The anonymous graphic character, in the absence of a letter, already showed that the content would be worrying. "Mom," someone knocked on the door. Hector asked her, watching her. It was probably just a misunderstanding. Trying to keep her voice steady as she went to the kitchen to open the envelope with her silence. Eloisa hated lying to her son, but it was necessary to keep him safe. She found a line of paper and photos inside. As she opened the letters, her expression became more gloomy. The letters describe in detail a network of distinctions that were not only connected to Gregorios Ruiz, but they were also involved with many forgotten public figures of the city. There were decided to better understand the situation. Eloisa spent all morning analyzing the manuscripts, reviewing every detail, reaching the highest levels of local authority. In the afternoon, while her children were playing in the yard, Eloisa sat in a chair and thought about the next steps. She knew that the publicization of this information could cause even more serious consequences, but she also understood that the silence could dilute the she asked a distorted voice on the other side of the line. "I am," she answered with a clear. Eloisa stood there, holding the phone, as the anticipation was in her mind. She knew she needed help, but as the anonymous voice had predicted, who could she trust? Eloisa felt all the more isolated, facing the real situation of the problem. But when she returned home, the books were still lying in front of her, each line a string of connections that seemed to be, but how far could they reach without putting their safety at risk? The internal conflict of Eloisa grew, worrying whether she should expose the records to the police and risk everything or remain silent but in doubt. Each choice had its own burden and pain. While fear took over her, Hector's son went to a friend's house to play. He shouted to warn his mother, but as she was lost in her thoughts, she did not see the boy leaving. Eloisa's heart ran towards the door, screaming, but Hector had already disappeared. Hector had not returned. Heaven had already taken orange and purple when Eloisa began to look for all of Judy's friends in the neighborhood, taking her with her to the but no one knew where they were. "Mom, where is Hector?" "We lost the." So she ran to the phone card, with her hands shaking as she called the number of Nicolas again. "Nicolas, my son Hector, disappeared. He went to his friend's house, and they have been for hours. I will send an email immediately. Eloisa, we will find him." Nicolas confirmed firmly. Eloisa hung up the phone, with her heart beating uncontrollably. The idea that the disappearance of Hector could be linked to her struggle against the disorder terrified her. She wondered if her effort for justice had been in vain, if the honor she had to pay was higher than that she was prepared to endure. The night was moving slowly, and every minute without news for Hector seemed eternal. Looking constantly out of the window, hoping to see her son returning home, Alice, realizing the intensity, played quietly in a corner, throwing in her mother's eyes in anxiety. Suddenly, Eloisa heard the sound of a car approaching her home and ran to the door. She immediately recognized Gregoria's vehicle and was terrified. The Eloisa was ready to attack, not letting anyone harm Hector. "Where is my son?" asked the Eloisa of Gregorios Moles, close enough to hear him. "Sweetheart, you must be crazy," he answered ironically. "I came to propose an agreement to you," said Gregorios with a silent voice. "If you do something against Hector, I will finish you." The Eloisa began to let the danger be in the air, without falling from the strong man she had in front of her. "I can do something against your son, and that's why I want you to cooperate. I will give you a large financial amount to cover your shadow for everything you have uncovered." You will have to give me everything you know. In this way, you will never hear my name again, and your family will be safe." Eloisa knew that she was lying and that she would never be safe after the return of the money and her, but she also knew that making an agreement with him would not solve anything. Following the agony, she heard the sirens of the police. She ran to the door, afraid of the worst, but with a hint of hope that her son was safe. Nicolas came out of a cell with a serious expression, bringing a mix of relief and anxiety. "We found him," Nicolas said quickly. "He was playing in a park near his friend, and he lost his sense of time." Eloisa was feeling a bit of a hangover, feeling the weight of the world leaving her for a moment. The boy came. He showed Nicolas to the car, from which Hector was descending gradually and appeared to be unharmed. Although Eloisa was worried about the dangers and was afraid of her safety and her son's, he realized that the situation had been simply proved a misunderstanding. Hector was fine, and nothing serious had happened. After a tight hug and a few tears, Eloisa was ready to thank Nicholas again, but he cut her off with a serious hand. "We must talk." Eloisa told Nicholas about Gregoria's visit and his proposal for an agreement. "And we both know that the agreement with Gregorio is not a long-term proposal. It is just a purchase of silence, not of security," answered Nicolas. Eloisa was struggling with the moral dilemma she had in front of her. "I can't accept that, not after everything I've seen and know. It would be like I'm a partner, but I'm afraid of the life of my children." Nicolas agreed. "I will follow Hector and Alicia, and I will also forewarn all the police." After Nicolas left, Eloisa felt a strange calm mixed with fear. It was in the sense that Hector was safe, and at the same time worried about the consequences of her decisions. As she was preparing the children for sleep, she tried to pretend that everything was normal, but she felt the uneasiness. When she went to her room to get some fresh air, her fear increased when she saw the door open at midnight. She remembered that she had locked it with a key when she went to her room. At the old balcony table, she found a folder with many photos of herself and her children, with a message written in red letters. Shaking, Eloisa realized that her decision to fight had simply put the dangerous game she was involved in at risk. She knew now that every step forward would be even more dangerous, but doing it back was not an option. The challenge had just begun. The next day, almost in the position that Gregorio had set, Eloisa's situation A call was received on the public telephone by Nicola's police colleague, with the obvious need for his voice. "Eloisa, you must come here," he said, without any hesitation. Nicolas was found at the park today in the morning seriously injured, explained by his colleague with a heavy tone. Without wasting time, Eloisa arranged someone to take care of the children and drop them at the hospital. The white road seemed endless as he headed for the front, where Nicolas was held. As he entered the room, he saw Nicolas lying motionless in bed, surrounded by ropes and machines. Tears ran in his eyes at the sight of his friend in this situation. Demetrius, Nicola's colleague at the police station, put his hand in his shoulder. As he explained what had happened, "They attacked me from behind, without having the opportunity to defend myself. It seems that they knew exactly when I would be alone." Pain and anger were mixed in Eloisa. Why did they do this to him? "They want to scare you, Eloisa, and make you stop," said Demetrius. Looking at the harsh reality of these words struck Eloisa like a whip. The attack on Nicola was not just a message to her, but a clear anticipation to her. Sitting next to Nicola's bed, holding his cold hand, Eloisa was told what she had to do. At any moment on the side of her injured friend, she strengthened her determination. "They want to leave them," she whispered to herself, but she couldn't. Not now. As she returned to her home that night, Eloisa felt the weight of her decision. She knew that the rest of the race could have even more serious consequences, but the silence now seemed impossible. As she opened the door to her home, she felt a sense of silence. It was clear that her struggle had cost her a lot, and the honor could continue to grow. My God, please protect me. I just wanted to return the money and do the right thing. She prayed in terror. Entrance. Her name was written in a grotesque way, by making her shake. When she opened the envelope, she found only a piece of paper with a message written in capital letters. This is your last warning. The reality of her situation was more sensitive than ever, in every decision, in every step she took. The threat of the victim was overwhelming, and it was a threat to all those she loved. After the last warning, the days that followed were marked by a hand-holding pressure that turned Eloisa's house into a dense fog. Eloisa increased her safety measures, strengthening the doors with more wood and placing new roadblocks in the windows. While inside the house, life turned into school-like designed routines to ensure everyone's safety. Eloisa received an unexpected call that broke the silence. The agonizing sadness that had begun to prevail, Nicola's partner cut off, with news that made her heart stop for a moment. Eloisa, you won't believe it. Nicolas woke up and speaks. He wants to make it happen, to tell you everything about Ruiz's family and the disorder in the city. You must make it happen too. Eloisa felt a sense of relief and fear. We are glad that Nicolas is better, but he is safe after everything that happened. We take every precaution and Nicolas is under protection, explained Demetrius with determination, and the constant fear of the opponents. So, Nicholas visited his shelter and found him apparently unharmed, but still marked by the events that would cost him his life. Eloisa, we can't let you go. The guy threatened me and threatened other people. This is bigger than us, and we must give an end. Returning home, Eloisa prepared a meal for her children with the few she had in her pockets, trying to hide the anxiety that she had. Under the phenomenon of tranquility and after putting her children to sleep, she had moments of tranquility looking at a starry sky, searching for a little peace before the sunset she knew was approaching. Then the phone rang almost midnight, breaking the silence of the night with its sharp intensity. Hello, Isa. Hello, Nicolas. Someone is trying to invade the place I'm hiding. I hear noises from outside. It seems that they have discovered where I am. Find a safe place, because they will probably reach you too, Nicolas said in a don't be strong, Nicholas. As he hung up the phone, Eloisa felt every heartbeat in her heart as a weapon in her conscience and knew that the coming hours would be crucial. She called Demetrius to inform him about the situation, feeling a mixture of despair and anger from fascism. She would not allow fear to prohibit the end of this battle. Nicholas had decided to face the danger in order to tell the truth, and Eloisa would be on his side. The hours that followed Nicholas' phone call were inevitably long for Eloisa, who remained restless, wandering around the house as she was waiting for news. When the sun finally began to shine in the sky, bringing with it the day of the trial that could change everything, Eloisa felt the eyes all over her as she arrived at the court. Some eyes were painful, others were humiliating, and some brought a feeling of evil. Demetrius informed her that Nicholas was safe and that the police had arrived in time to avoid the worst. With little rest, Eloisa was ready to enter the court's room, knowing that everything was being investigated. Inside the room, Nicolas was already present. He looked pale and pale, but his determination was apparent in his face. They exchanged a glance of coordination and strength before they sat down. Dikes began with the Nisangelia to describe in detail the network of the Nicholas was one of the main witnesses, and his position was both a description of the incident and a direct call. Eloisa watched every person in the room, especially the judge, trying to decrypt their reactions. Gregorio's Ruiz was present, calm, but his eyes showed harshness and coldness. The judges were whispering to each other, writing down every word that Nicholas said. When it was time for Eloisa to take her place, she took steady steps forward, even though fear tormented her in every word she uttered. not only expressing the crimes of Gregorio, but also her own indifference. During a break, while Eloisa returned to her seat, a man who recognized her as one of the closest friends of Gregorio's approached her in a discreet manner and gave her a point. Eloisa took the map with shaking hands and put it down from the table, reading the words written with a violent graphic character. "This is not going to end here. Watch out." One moment Eloisa crossed Eloisa's body and quickly checked if someone else had noticed the change. But everyone was busy with their own discussions and preparations for the next session. When the trial continued, Eloisa tried to concentrate on the trial, on the questions of the lawyers and on the answers of the witnesses, but one part of her remained in a hurry, waiting for the next blow. Finally, when it was her turn to take her place again, Eloisa rose up and went to court with determination. It was not just a case of indecency, but a case of justice and humanity, Eloisa stated. "I chose not to remain silent, because silence sets us apart. I chose to fight not for myself, but for all those who have no voice against this mafia." At the end of her sentence, held a silence of respect in the air, which broke only by the voice of the judge calling the next witness. The courtroom was loaded with dense energy. People were whispering among themselves, and the tension was sensitive. Eloisa knew that despite the challenges and threats, she was determined to continue to fight for truth and justice. Eloisa returned to her position, feeling the burden of her words to run in the hallways of the court. When the day finally came to an end, she got up, exhausted but unbearable. Outside the court, a crowd had gathered, with the supporters of the Gregorio Ruiz to cheer up the company, with their faces turned from anger and indignation. "They must have been forced to be here," thought the Eloisa, watching them hold posters with threatening words and obstructing her exit. The hatred that was visible to their eyes was annoying. Demetrius put a hand on her shoulder, whispering, "We are not alone in this." Looking around her, Eloisa saw some people who had been moved by her testimony to unite her, forming a human shield. Together they moved out, facing the voices and hostile glances. After the confrontation in the court, the opponents returned to their rooms, while Eloisa went to her house. When she saw Elisa and Hector playing quietly in the living room floor, a sense of relief surrounded her. The innocence of the child's laughter was a balm for the seriousness of the day. So, she got along with them, trying to find comfort in her mother's normality, but her mind was restless. The idea that her actions could put her children in danger was disturbing. As she put them to sleep, Eloise kissed their forehead, trying to convey a calmness that she did not feel. Most of the people who promised themselves were there. After they were assured that they had fallen asleep, they sat at the table to allow themselves a moment of rest. The struggle seemed endless, and for a moment they thought of giving up. Then the public phone rang on the street, breaking the night silence like a distraction. Eloisa ran and raised her hand, afraid that it might be someone sent by Gregorio. On the other hand, a distorted voice echoed, promising one last element that could change the course of the game for her. Eloisa's heart was filled with new hope. "How can I trust you? How do I know it's not a trap? But I am the one who gave you the previous manuscripts that revealed some truths about Gregorio. You know you can trust me. I will be at the city park on the weekends. Alone. If you want the truth, come find it." The phone call ended as quickly as it started. With the phone still in her hand and her mind full of thoughts, the Eloisa was faced with the absolute chance of taking what was needed to secure justice, but also represented a fatal risk. So she spent the night thinking about her decision, and, with the first rays of the sun, she made her choice, reinforced by the thought that every step was for a greater purpose than her own safety. With renewed determination, Eloisa was prepared for the meeting, knowing that this could be a decisive point in her tireless effort for justice. At dawn, Eloisa went to the city park, where the meeting was scheduled. The morning mist covered the place, creating a mysterious atmosphere and tension in every bench and tree. Eloisa remained in a hurry, watching for every danger signal. Finally, she spotted a lonely figure near the lake, wrapped in a fur coat. Carefully, Eloisa approached, knowing that at this moment she could be so cunning as the key to her target. The figure lowered her doll, revealing a woman with fascist eyes. Eloisa Benays asked with a dismay, "I am. You said you have something for me." Eloisa replied, trying to remain calm. The woman gave her a thick blanket. "I am a former assistant to the boy Ruiz, and here are his recordings, where he accepts everything from donations to handouts. I can't continue to accept this anymore. I hope he helps. I caught people on his side, and I don't want to participate in this anymore," explained the woman before leaving quickly. In the court, the sound recordings were played in front of the court and the judges. Gregoriou tried to defend himself, but the evidence was indisputable. During the trial, Gregory Ooze was forced to expose his movements in a provocative statement. "I thought I could control everything." Finally, he admitted it at the end of the trial. The judge was sent to Eloisa immediately before issuing the sentence. "Mrs. Eloisa, your courage and determination not only revealed a deep network of discrimination, but also protected this community from future damage. It is right to be responsible for your heroism and the difficulties you have faced." In this way, the judge ordered that an important part of the property assets should be allocated to Eloisa and her children. With this money, Eloisa not only secured a hopeful future in the education of her children, but also bought a new home, symbolizing a new beginning for the family. Weeks later, the story of Eloisa was often cited as an example of courage and indifference. Then she became an inspired figure in the community, encouraging others to raise their voices against injustice. 5 years after the trial that shocked the city, Eloisa watched her children play in the courtyard of the new house, bathed in the sun that symbolized the new life they had built. Now smart in the end, Eloisa had found a job, and her children no longer suffered from the loss, living happily on the side of their mother. The surrounding community also had a significant change. Where fear and indifference once dominated, now a spirit of cooperation and justice has been revealed. Eloisa played a decisive role in this transformation, not only as the woman who questioned Gregorio's Ruiz, but also as the inspired figure who continued to work with the community to ensure that the shadows of the past will not return. After their conviction, Gregorio's Ruiz and his friends spent their days in prison. The recordings provided by the former assistant resulted in the final blow to their network of, but also as a pre-evaluation for others who tried to follow similar paths. Nicolas, who had now recovered from his injuries, became head of local police, leading an era of transformation and disappearance in the company. He and Eloisa maintained a strong friendship, united by the common history of struggles and excesses. I always visited Eloisa's house. Each meeting was a reminder of the common routes and the bonds that they created. While Eloisa was preparing tea, she was analyzing the context of her story. Her struggle was translated into local documentary, which is used in schools as a lesson on the importance of integrity and courage. Nicola's company brought laughter and an energy that was always acceptable. As he was sitting in the garden, with the sun shining behind the trees, the conversation was going on between the past and the future, between the memories of the dark moments and the plans for a better tomorrow. "You changed our city, Eloisa. You changed our lives," said Nicholas, raising his glass in a bow. Eloisa smiled, looking at her children who had made them friends. "We have all changed, and we will always continue to change for the better," he said as the night fell on the city that once shivered below the weight of